From the majestic Jebel Jais to the lush Al Ain oasis, the UAE's diverse terrains, spanning deserts, mountains, mangroves, and coastlines, enhance the natural beauty of the region. As surely as the thatched roof above us is woven with palm fronds, our memories too are woven with the brown, gold, and rich green hues of our natural environment. On that note, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to our fourth edition of the Ras Al Khaimah Art Festival's 2025 speaker series. My name is Janan Farhat, and I'm a researcher and your moderator for today's session. Our panel, titled Green Recollections, Nurturing Ecological Memory, offers a space to share stories and reflect on how unique, quote-unquote, green landscapes inspire lasting ecological memories. And we are very honored to have a wonderful selection of speakers with us here today. Immediately to my right, we have Mr. Peter Farrington, an environmental specialist and artist from Abu Dhabi. From Dubai, excuse me. We also have with us Ms. Emma Cresswell in the center. She is the Director of Learning, Development, and Sustainability at Wild Ideas. And on our far right, we have Mr. Arnaud Gazo, a silent expedition guide and the president and founder of Away Expedition in Abu Dhabi. Welcome all. All right, so Peter, I have my very first question for you. From a personal perspective, how has your connection to different landscapes in Oman, Qatar, and Canada influenced your environmental work? And maybe are there any particular green memories from these regions that you carry with you in your day-to-day life?
Thank you very much for the question, and I'm very happy to be here, and salam alaikum. Very, very honored and pleased actually to be having a conversation with everybody here about something that's been near and dear to my heart for my entire life. When I was 3 years old, when my parents weren't noticing and didn't seem to mind, I was outside, I was in the woods. Every day I was in the woods. So it doesn't just, in terms of your question, it's not just in relation to my work. My entire life is connected to nature one way or the other. It's the reason why I studied nature, ecology in university, 2 degrees, because it was an important part of me and something that I knew I needed to pursue. So everything I do when I'm at work, currently I work for Dubai Environment Climate Change Authority. We just established a couple of weeks ago. I now have a DECA number, which I'm very happy about, and I focus on nature conservation. Everything that I do in relation to my experiences growing up through university. And I do have green memories from everywhere that I've been. And I was actually thinking about one this morning that I had forgotten about. And that was when I was visiting my son in Brazil. He was playing soccer there. We were in downtown Sao Paulo, so 17 million people. So it's a highly urban environment. And I remember I was drawn towards a city park off the main street called Reforma Boulevard. I couldn't help but want to go in there. And nobody speaks English there. My son fortunately speaks Portuguese, so I didn't want to lose track of him. But I had to go into this park. I was in there for no more than 10 seconds. And that was the most powerful memory of my entire visit there. I went twice, and that 10 seconds in the park was phenomenal to me. It was the feeling I had. It was very, very powerful. And I can say it felt green. It was incredible. And so this is one that I carry with me all the time, and it's from feeling. I'll give you another example. When I did my master's, I was up in the Northwest Territories, so in the Arctic of Canada. And one day, I noticed something went running by my tent. So there's just me and my field assistant sitting in this area called Salt Flats, just an open area with mountains all around. I wondered what it was that went running by the camp. I knew it was caribou, but I wondered why. I went outside, and standing about 20 feet away was a black wolf, the alpha male, pure black. He was on a slight rise, and he's sticking his chest out, barrel-chested like, and he was staring past me. And then his glance moved over to me, and we just looked at each other, and I was just in a state of awe. And we had more encounters, this wolf and I. One time I tried to follow him, and I couldn't keep up. I turned around, and as I was heading back to camp, who did I run into but the wolf who had come back and come up from behind me. And again, we just looked at each other, and it's the eye contact. This is what creates, for me, the strongest memories. So we stared at each other just for a few seconds. I wasn't nervous at all, and it was an incredible memory. And I have these kind of experiences for my entire life. Later on, that whole pack came into camp. Actually, it was a couple of days later. And I saw them, and I was very excited about it. They saw me, and they turned around and went back into the camp, or into the trees. And when they did, they stopped somewhere in the forest, and they started singing, howling. They were defining territory, but they were singing to me. It was an incredible interaction with nature. And the only way that, for me, that I've had this kind of experience, these green memories, is by being in nature, especially when I'm there by myself. I love these experiences. And if I could do anything suggest anything to everybody, go out in nature. Nature loves you. Nature's waiting for you. And the experiences and the memories that you'll generate will be amazing.
Wow, that sounds absolutely incredible. You had an encounter with a black wolf? Can I ask where this was?
In northern Canada.
In northern
Northwest
Canada.
Territories, yeah. I've had encounters with bears. One time I was working up there again in the high Arctic, right near the Arctic Ocean, and I was weighing trucks, but I had 45 minutes to wait between trucks. And so I noticed there was a brown bear wandering around, and I threw a stone at it to chase it away, and it chased after the stone. So I actually ended up playing catch with this brown bear. I would throw it, he would chase after it, and then I realized he was actually closer to my trailer than I was. So I worked my way back, secretly I thought, to get into my trailer, and guess who's sitting on the stairs? The bear. And the only way for me to get into the trailer was to walk by him. And so I did, and he let me. And I almost put my hand out to pet him on the head. Almost. But as you can see, I still have both hands, so I didn't do that.
Oh my God, well, I'm glad to see that all your limbs are available, they exist. That sounds like an incredible encounter, but I also must say, I think that you were the intruder in this scenario. But no, I'm very happy to see you in one piece, Peter. Glad you were able to make it to today's session. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, Emma, as the founder of Wild Ideas, can you tell us about the work you do to support the implementation of impactful ecological change for schools, but also for the private sector?
Sure. Again, thank you for having me here today. It's great to see everyone. So I think we're going to get into a little bit later about how I come to be in this sector. But what I'm actually doing at the moment is I create hands-on programs for schools, mainly for children, but also adults, where we can connect them with nature. For schools, I work with them by integrating nature into their curriculum. We build outdoor classrooms and permaculture gardens, and also we have rewilding projects going on for schools as well. With regards to outdoor classrooms, it's a wonderful experience for a child just to be out of their actual brick and mortar classroom itself. So we would have a canopy and an area for them to sort of sit round. They could do English, they could do maths, they could do science outside. It's not just about learning about nature. So we did an experiment, a mini experiment, with a teacher friend of mine who teaches English, and she would have the kids write a story in the classroom. And then she would have them go outside and write a story in the outdoor classroom. And the difference it makes in their creative aspect, but also they're relaxed and they really let their feelings come out and show when they're outside in nature. It makes such a big difference. And then with regards to the private sector, I had them come up with sustainable practices that they can integrate into their business. Things also from green projects to also well-being programs. So with the help of the Al-Qasimi Foundation, we built an outdoor garden in the prison over here, in the ladies' prison, and that made a huge difference for them. It's a lifeline for them, it really is. And then, so my goal really is to have people's knowledge made into action. So we want to do something about this to get people really back into nature. So yeah, that's what I do.
I love that you mentioned the initiative that you're working on, or that you're working on with regards to the ladies' prison, because I think so often, even with this panel, we're talking about nature and how it intersects with memory, but we also know that nature is so integral to our mental health.
Yes.
And I think, especially in this country and in the Gulf, and sometimes we forget that nature is around us everywhere, and it's also an inspiration, and it's something that perhaps can be a little bit harder to get in touch with in the summer months, but in our winter, which is maybe akin to the Western spring, the weather is incredible, and I think it's also the perfect time to reconnect with nature and to also just perhaps just work on our mental health and really utilize nature for that purpose.
Yeah, definitely. I think even if you live in a high-rise flat, you could have a small plant, a small window box, and it makes such a difference. You'll see how much nature that actually brings into your life, and it makes such a big difference. It really does.
No, thank you so much, Emma, for sharing that. And I'm not gonna touch upon the second question, but because that is such an interesting part of the work that you do. But we'll circle back. Arno, I have my first question for you. So your journey from a successful entrepreneur to founding the Silent Journey movement reflects a profound shift toward nature and, of course, toward inner reflection. Can you tell us what inspired you to move from the corporate world to being a silent expedition guide? And how does the experience you create contribute to preserving ecological memory for you personally?
Sure. Oh, I think this one before. So, yoo-hoo! Thank you. It's a really powerful questions because you're talking about shifting. And I experienced a profound shift when I found myself living an experience I wouldn't live in any cities. And this experience was in the desert of Liwa in Abu Dhabi. I was standing there in the middle of nowhere. There was nothing around except dunes, a repetitive patterns that one could see, and there was no buildings, nothing. The only noise was silence. And at that moment when I was there, the sun was about to set. And I realized that what I was doing, like maybe what you are doing too, in cities, was for a certain reason. Money, achievements, success. And what I found in this moment was something else. It was peace. And from that moment, I was like, okay, I experienced something. How can I experience it more? And I went into unlearning the things we learn when we are born, the conditioning. So I jumped into the unknown. For a year, I was looking for silence, looking to, in a way, at that moment, I was really looking for a part of me to die. And it was a plan that I had before. I wanted to die before 30. And even it happened before. I let go. I let go of this conditioning. I learned. And in this year of silence, the answer came. I came closer to nature, to going back to this place in the desert. And that's what I do now as a profession. I bring people there and I want them to experience, not to understand, not to know about it, but to feel it. And by feeling, one can initiate a change. Yes. In this space, in fact, when one become one with nature, as Philippe was saying, with your experience with the wolves, you're not out of it. You're in it. It welcomes you. You don't fight against it. You're with it. And so in this space, there is no more should or I have to or I must. Automatically, our behavior changes. We flow like a flower would grow. There is no hurriness anymore. So that's the contrast between my previous life and now. Even if I'm creating a brand which is Away Expedition, I try to keep peace as the rule. I will not hurry and change my behavior because of money or some other pressures. So, yeah, I invite everyone to step into nature and silence when you have the opportunity to, so you can find clarity, you can find alignment, and you can simply be.
That's absolutely beautiful. I think there's a very particular moment when you're in nature, and you realize, I can hear my heartbeat. And that is a really beautiful, profound moment when you're in nature, because it's you and your heart and the environment, and that's it. It's just an incredible feeling. And there are very few places where you can achieve that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so
Jenna.
much, Arna. All right, Peter. You have studied nature both from an ecological perspective and also from an artistic perspective. Do you think the two disciplines of science and art could work more synergistically together to preserve ecological memory?
Yeah, when you shared this question with me earlier, I thought, my God, this is a massive question. And I don't even know where to start. But really just building on what Arnold just said in terms of having this profound experience when you're in Liwa. I had the same experience when I moved to the Gulf. I moved to Oman, and I had some unbelievable experiences that I could never have anticipated. And it's because of the energy here in this part of the world. It's phenomenal. And I couldn't shake it. And you mentioned feeling. The feeling was set, and it wouldn't go away. It was a really nice feeling. And it was from this feeling that I realized I need to start painting. So I didn't paint before. So about 10 years ago, or 12 years ago, I started to paint. And I still paint now, and I paint from feeling. And the feeling is there when I'm doing my work also. I'm using my left brain, which is the scientific, government, rational side. But I'm using as much my right side as well. Let's say if you want to call it in terms of energy, the feminine energy from the right side, the visionary, the creative side of me. It's so important for me for what I do. And some of my friends now, one is a professor of medicine. He's had some experiences with me that, again, for him were like awe-inspiring. You can't plan these things, they just happen. And he is now wanting to start painting. He's starting to realize very quickly how important his job as an eye surgeon has become enhanced by using art, by being creative, with his scientific and medical knowledge as well. Einstein was another person that was extremely spiritual, very creative. So people that really seem to be able to achieve the balance, the peace, but also accomplish things on behalf of humanity, they have both. They have the left side and the right side, the art and the science, both working together. The other part I just wanted to mention was about ecological memory, because this is a really complicated topic for me. So as a scientist or as an ecologist, when I think of ecological memory, I think of myself, as we all are, part of an ecosystem. So what is my memory? My memory is based upon my experiences. Many of those experiences I cannot recall. But some of them I can. That's my conscious memory. Then there's my subconscious memory. And that is expressed more as feelings or instinct or intuition. And my behavior is often related to the experiences that not I had, but maybe my parents had, or going back many generations. So there's a genetic memory that's at play here as well. So this is how I, as an individual, behave. And you can imagine all the people that are human beings. We all respond slightly different because we have different genetics, we have different experiences. So as a collective, we have an ecological memory. And we interact with each other and reshape our memories continuously. But we're only one species out of maybe 8 billion species on the planet, although that's a conservative estimate. Science has only identified maybe 2 million of the species. So most of the species on the planet we don't know. We don't know how ecosystems really function. But imagine how each species will have the same kind of memory that I just described now. So how we respond to disturbance, for example. It's a collective response of plants, of animals, of humans, all these things working and interacting together. This is ecological memory. For an artist, the artistic side of me, I can understand this from my field work. I have to rely on not what I can measure. There's just too much out there to measure to understand. I use my intuition, my feeling, which is where the art comes in. To me, the best way to move forward as anybody is to harness both. Your scientific side, your logical side, but more so your creative side, intuitive side. Have a balance. Hope that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. We have this conversation a lot, actually, even when we're just talking about like the education sector, because so often STEM is put on a pedestal, and a lot of the conversations that we have been trying to have is the emphasis on how can we make STEM STEAM? How can we put the arts in STEM? And I think we so often forget, as you said, that so many of our scientists in the past have been both scientists but artists. They're scientists and philosophers. They philosophize about God, and then they also are, making incredible discoveries in the fields of astronomy and science in general. So I think it's very important to start talking more about the benefits of having interdisciplinary, not just studies, of course, but also just utilizing both parts of your brain, your creativity, and also the more rational, perhaps, part of your mind.
If I could just
Please.
respond a little bit to that. And there's a little bit to what you said, Arno, about silence. And my children, and your children are your greatest teachers. My children and nature have been my two greatest teachers. And the idea about silence is really important, because one time when I flew from Doha, when I was working there back to Canada, my older son said, "Dad, let's go for a walk." Well, it was minus 28 degrees outside, and I wasn't that keen about going out, but I said, okay, why not? We went into the forest in a river valley, deep snow. We're walking and not seeing anything. And then my son said, "Dad, do you mind if we just stand here for a few minutes and just see what happens?" After 1 minute, suddenly a squirrel shows up. Then a couple of blue jays, which are beautiful blue birds in the wintertime. And then other birds started to show up, and other animals started to show up. And it was only because we were standing in silence that suddenly nature started to reveal itself to us. And so if one can have that kind of way in nature, Nature will come to you so fast and so beautifully. It's wonderful. It's better than watching TV, believe it or not. Even better than shopping in a mall, which I love to do, by the way. So, um, and it's unlimited discovery, and each person will experience something differently. And this is what I love as well. I actually did an event, which I don't have time to talk about now, but we each were standing in the same place, and we each perceived the environment and what we were looking at differently and expressed it differently. And that's wonderful. So it's not about conforming, it's about sharing your own individual personal experiences with others. And this is when it becomes really wonderful. This is when you start to come together as a community, as people, and you start to feel, getting back to me, and another important thing, I only paint from feeling. I don't paint things. It's only when the feeling comes, I paint. And really, there's no mistakes as well. Don't worry about mistakes when you're painting or doing anything. Just see what happens. Because you're actually at flow, or in the flow with nature, but also with spirit. And this is one of the big lessons I learned when I moved to this part of the world. Spiritual energy here is unbelievably powerful. I love it.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you so much. Emma, I wanted to ask you a question. I personally know this. I've attended some of Emma's workshops at the Ras Al Khaimah Art Festival, but I think it's time to unveil. So, could you perhaps elaborate a little bit on the personal journey that led you to beekeeping and how it's shaped your approach to expanding the UAE's green lung?
Sure. So before we even get into beekeeping, I'm going to take a step back. My journey started, quite a few years ago now, when my son, who's now 10, was quite small at the time. He must have been about 3 or 4 years old. And I had the phone call that everyone dreads from the doctor. We found some abnormal cells. You need to come in, we need to get them out. And shock, my world just stood still. And went into the hospital, had everything removed, it's all good. But then something in me starts thinking, I have a small child, what can I do to keep myself around longer for him? So then I go down the whole rabbit hole of where does my food come from, what's in my food, and then that led into regenerative gardening, and then soil science, beekeeping, and I was taken aback. Things like we have 60 harvests left on our planet. What are our kids going to eat when they grow up? What can I do to get this out there, to make a difference? So this all happened pretty much around lockdown, and I started making a small garden at home. And it was at the front of the villa, and all the kids in the street were coming over and, really looking, what is she doing? Oh, that looks fun. So I was imparting a bit of my knowledge, to them, and then they were going home, and I had the parents calling me like, oh, really? Wow. And I've got him who wants to make a garden in my house. What can we do? Wow, this is really something. And then when we were doing the online learning, there was something going on with my son, and he was not enjoying, and I'm sure many kids weren't, but he was not enjoying the online learning. And then it got me thinking, and I was watching the other kids. So we had him tested. He has ADHD and he has autism as well. And thankfully, that came out during lockdown. Otherwise, we would still be battling, I think, to this day with school and wondering, what's going on. And then from there, I asked his teacher at school, the headmistress, could I build a garden at school for you? He's struggling, he really doesn't want to come back into school. And there was a lot of kids also, regardless, they didn't have ADHD, they didn't have autism, but they didn't want to go back to school. So I built a garden at school. She was awesome about it, and we built an outdoor classroom. We had the garden going on. The kids loved it. I ended up being there all day, every day. It fast became one of the favourite lessons. Was up there with PE, music, and art, and yeah, they all really loved it. And I just kept thinking to myself, but this is still, it's not enough. It's one school, you know. How can I keep going and impacting knowledge, and then I started looking also, you know, again at the garden and realizing that, you know, bees are a huge part of regenerative agriculture. So then that led me down the avenue of beekeeping. But I actually went on the course with my son because I don't know if anyone knows anything about autism, but when they have something in their mind that they really like, they're really into that topic and they will know more than a lot of adults about it. And they will take so much knowledge on board. And he was really interested, so I thought, okay, I'll take him along. And he was about 8 at the time. And oh my gosh, he was like a sponge, you know. I was too. I was so fascinated by it. But aside from that, I learned that the frequency, the key that the bees actually beat their wings in, has a calming effect on ADHD, on autism, and also on anyone who has stress, anxiety, and also PTSD. And I watched him after we had done the theory, and we were all around the hive, and all the other kids, some of the kids that were there were quite scared, but he wasn't. He sat there in front of the hive and he was telling all the other kids, this bee's doing this job, that bee's doing that, and I've never seen him so calm ever. So from that, I was going on to my best friend, she's Emirati, and I was telling her, bees, this is it, you know, just come and experience it. So she came along, she got hooked, and we were talking, and we decided, okay, let's go out, let's get 50 hives. Let's start small. And we at the time lived near the mangroves, and she said, okay, I'll speak to my uncle, we're just going to go, we're going to put the hives there in the mangroves, because it was coming to summer, the mangroves were coming into bloom, and it was a huge forest that the bees could go out into. And the girls, we call them our girls, they went out there and they pollinated the mangroves faster than the wind or other insects would have done. It was amazing to see. And obviously the side product of that was they made close to a ton of honey in 2 weeks. Yeah, because the forest is huge, right? It's a big area. But we wanted to be more sustainable about beekeeping and to teach people over here sort of a little bit more about how to be more sustainable about it, because we've watched some beekeepers, they just go in and they tear out everything that's in the hive, the bees aren't left with anything. So we wanted to do things in the right way. So that's how I came into to beekeeping. It wasn't a small start. And we actually presented our honey at the COP28. It was given out as gifts to all the dignitaries. So my king in England actually had a jar of my honey, which I was quite proud of. So, yeah. Have you? Yeah. So yeah, that's my journey into beekeeping and wanting to just be sort of more sustainable and create a greener future for our children out here.
Can I ask you, Emma, if you still do beekeeping, and what does that look like now in your life?
Yes, so it looks like now very busy. We have doubled our hives.
Wow.
Yeah. They're actually out in the mountains, not in the mountains, but in a valley towards the mountains in Iraq. There's lots of wildflowers that are blooming out here at the moment. which is something else that I'd like to try to create, is a year-round supply of pollen, so that we can have our gills looked after, but also to create a wildflower honey over here in UAE, which isn't at the moment.
That's incredible. And thank you so much for sharing like this very profoundly personal story about your experience with your son and nature. I think we also so often forget that nature is normal. And being in closed off environments, in very static, non-dynamic, air-conditioned units is not how, even our, I think 1 or 2 generations ago, our families didn't live like this and our grandparents didn't live like this. So it's incredible to see how the restorative effects of nature really bring out, can I say the best in people, or just help them really get in touch with themselves in a very good kind of way, I think.
Definitely. Very healing, for sure.
Arno, your expeditions are all about reconnecting with nature in very profound ways. What's a desert moment that could literally take your breath away, no matter how many times you've witnessed it?
That's an easy one and a difficult one at the same time, because there are so many things. But there is one powerful thing, and it's the sunset. Peter, before you were saying that each of us, we have a personality, we have our own memories. And you know what? Every sunset is different. So what you say is reflected in nature, in simple thing like a sunset. And that's another thing as well. The sunset and the sunrise is like a cycle. And it's the remembrance of this cycle. And when we are there for so long, we can see the cycle in our own memories, in our own life, and we don't need to understand it. It's just evident, like the stories you mentioned, it's like a revelation. It comes from something different from the intellect. But you know what? We're talking. So to experience it, I invite you to go deep, immerse yourself, live it, and then you will see that the cycle is everywhere in life. You will see the contrast of life and death, like the sunrise and the sunset. And when you see that the sun sets, in a few hours is coming back, you understand these cycles, When you see something on the sun that is disappearing and coming back, and the patterns. So everything is, I was saying before, it's easy and difficult because everything is a source of inspiration there. Even, the simple thing, we were talking about bees before. And you were talking about being open to these things. So when we're open, everything takes the breath away.
That's very, very profound. And I think also one of the things that you actually made me remember, speaking of memory, is last year I was in Wadi Rum. I don't know if you've ever been to Jordan and if you've seen the sunset at Wadi Rum. It's absolutely breathtaking in a valley that is strangely it is a desert at the end of the day, but it's also a very unique desert. And I think what you said about how every sunset is different really resonated with me, because every sunset really is different. No sunset that you remember looks the same, but the sun setting and rising is such a constant in nature. So even if everything about the landscape is completely different, even if you're in a completely different climate or environment, and everything you see is brown, or everything you see is green, or everything is transparent because it's ice, you'll still see the sun. And I think that's a very, very beautiful thing to share.
Can I bounce back on one thing?
Please do.
I brought someone there last week, and we were sharing about the experience him and I in the middle of nothing after the journey. And he told me that before he used to think there is only one color is yellow in the desert. And he told me that in the last 24 hours he had seen more colors than in a month in the city. But you see, we have like some belief, or we think the desert is this. But when you go there, you see that that's not what we thought. And it makes me think about the Wadi Rum experience you had, these multiple colors. That's that's so beautiful. It's wonderful.
If I can jump in, for me, sunsets can also be different, not because of what you're seeing, but because, in a way, it's the end of the day. It's like summing up your entire day, what you experienced, what you saw, what you spoke. But a sunset can also be memorable because maybe you can smell the campfire as well. So your memory is also being fed by aroma, by what you ate, what you're hearing. Maybe there's something out in the desert now that's making a noise, call of a bird, or maybe it's frogs or things like this. All of these all your five senses contribute to these memories, actually. So the sunset is so much more, or many of the other experiences, than what you see. Matter of fact, they say that the strongest memory is actually from smell. So it's incredible. So everybody literally is equipped to go out and have their own experiences and create their own memories, and it's free.
The best part. I mean, we've come to almost the end of the panel, and I wanted to throw a question out to both our lovely speakers, but also to the audience. What are some surprising or perhaps unexpected ecological stories or memories from your personal experiences? Maybe any moments that challenged your understanding of nature or deepened your connection to it? Does anything perhaps come to mind?
The question was for me?
For anyone who wants to answer. Yeah.
Of us.
Yeah. All of you can answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Put the pressure on you.
There's always something new that you can learn from nature. Always. You know, every time I go out and into the garden, there's always something new, and there's always, from a whole classroom of children, they all have different questions. You know, it's just amazing. It goes back to what you were saying before about how everyone sees something different. You know, I can have a class of 30 kids, but they all feel, see, smell, hear something different. When you ask them just to stay quiet for a moment and then tell me what they can hear, what they can smell, what's around them, each one says something different. So in that, I'm always learning. I'm always learning what someone else is feeling or what nature is just giving us to learn from.
Peter?
I'm going to tell you one of my nature surprises from Dubai. So, and this really surprised me. I was driving to work. I have an SUV, and I'm going, 100, 110, 120. And in my rear view mirror, I thought I saw something, but I wasn't sure. And then I exited the freeway, and I knew there was something there because I saw movement. And then I realized what it was a pigeon. It was sitting on my back windshield wiper, and he had gone along for a ride from my home all the way to my office. And when I got to the office, I hit the little speed bump going like 1 kilometer an hour. It hopped off and walked away. And to me, it was like, this was a huge surprise to me. I was shocked. I didn't know if he consciously knew he was going along for a ride, if they had started to mimic and learn from humans, which they do. But it was a real big shock for me. I'll never forget that moment. So we can have those sort of experiences here, and so many surprises from nature.
I actually have one that I'd like to share. That was something that I mentioned to a friend just last week. A couple years back when I was just a humble university student.
Graduated?
Yeah. Thank you. A few years back, I was in Italy, and I visited the cultural heritage site of Pompeii. And I don't know if any of you have been to Pompeii, or if maybe you've read about it, but Pompeii at one point in history was, of course, a town that was buried by ash. And it was, I think, uncovered maybe sometime in the 1800s. But the site itself is a very shocking place to visit, I think, because of some of the molds, the casts of people that they have there, but also just learning about the history of the site and how even in places like this, nature finds a way to bounce back. And I think one of the most shocking things, one of the most surprising things that I remember learning, maybe perhaps when I was a child, is even when there's a volcano that erupts and it burns everything in its path, or there's a forest fire and it burns absolutely everything in its wake, a few days later you'll come back to that area and you'll see plants emerging from the soil. And after I visited Pompeii a few days later, I went to Mount Vesuvius, and they told us while we were at the top that within a span of 5 minutes, if Mount Vesuvius were to erupt, within 5 minutes, everything from Mount Vesuvius to the coastline would be buried under lava. And I think even with that knowledge of something very, very terrifying, it's always striking to see that perhaps everything will be burned in its wake, but even with that, nature will bounce back. And that was a very profound moment for me personally.
Anybody have a memory?
Anyone want to share a memory?
I can share something.
Please.
So I live in the southern part of Dubai, in Jebel Ali, in Al Furjan. So as you can see, like it's all concrete villas and buildings. But I made a running route around. So around the buildings and along the villas. And some villas, they have plants. So whenever I do my 8-kilometer route, when I started first, when I run, I start smelling leaves, freshly cut grass, and I can see some cattail. I call it cattail. It's like weeds, and then when they grow, they look like cattails. And then as I go throughout my route, when I start smelling the flowers, that's when I know that I'm nearly done with my 8-kilometer run. So that's how I like. So yes, even in a concrete jungle like Dubai, so because I cannot really take care of plants, I have a black thumb. They die on me. So, but at least I can experience nature that way.
Yeah,
That's
good.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I think sometimes it's even just that, right? Nature, little bits of nature here and there that remind us that we're living, that there are living things around us, and that sometimes even you don't need to have your smartwatch tell you when you're going to be finishing your route. It's just the smell of the grass and the flowers and where you're at. And on that note, I wanted to ask if anyone in the audience has any questions. Please, yeah.
Hi, Emma, thank you for sharing your story about your son. I was just intrigued because I'm in exactly the same situation with my son as you. Has the bees helped? Has that developed? Is there anything there?
Yes, definitely. So, if ever I see that he's getting really, really agitated, I will take him outside and we will go and we can just sit. I don't have a beehive at home. We've got local bees in the tree, which you sit and watch. but just being out in the garden. And he's been ill recently, had the influenza B that went round, it's been horrible. But just being outside really makes such a difference. But the bees, for sure, for sure. Like I say, he is hyperactive with a capital H, but you put him with the bees and he is so interested. He's fascinated. I mean, it's really fascinating. I find it fascinating. They all have their own job to do. You know, there's a nurse bee, there is a guard bee, there is a bee that feeds the other bees, that takes care of the other bees. They have an undertaker bee, you know, when some die, this one will take them outside. They don't want them to be left in the hive. There's just so many interesting things you can watch them doing, and I think it's fascinating for them. And I think also for some people there's that fear side of things, but once, you know, you've got your gloves on and you've got a veil and you know that you're safe, that nothing's going to happen, then yeah, he's no problem. He's in there, he's got the frames out, and he'll be the first one to spot where the queen is. And sometimes she's hard to spot because she's covered by the other bees, by trying to protect her, but he's there, and yeah, he's really, really into it. There was one day we were helping someone do a bee removal. They had a big nest and they wanted it taken away, big hive, sorry, and we went up to remove the branch that it was on, just so that we could put the hive in a cardboard box, seal it up, and take it away to a new home. But as we did that, the queen with some of the bees fell off, and there was leaf litter all over the floor. And we're going to be here hours trying to find her. He found her. 2 minutes. He had found her because he's so interested in it. You've just got to find their passion, and when you do, wow. But the actual key that the bees beat their wings at is calming. Very. You could, but I think being out in nature's different, and it really has just one of those moments. When I had all the hives in the mangroves, I mean, that's a lot. That's like 3 million bees that we had. It is a lot. But even then, I had a little chair that I would take and I would just put it in amongst, you know, we were about this deep in water and we were surrounded by hives and the mangroves, and I just sit. And it was awesome. I have people like from the land looking at me like, she's nuts, but no. It was awesome, it really was. Yeah.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Arno. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to thank our lovely speakers. Can we have a round of applause, please? Thank you so much for coming down to RAC. I mean, Emma, you're here, but for both of you for coming down, for sharing with us your experiences, your stories, and of course, most importantly, your ecological memories. And I want to thank you all in the audience for being very, very patient, very good listeners. I encourage you all to go around and explore Hamada Heritage Village. This weekend we have cultural weekends, so the music and the festivities have already begun. There's a lot of people in traditional wear, so please go out and enjoy. And yeah, we'll see you around the festival site. Thank you so much.
Thank you.